It was the utter filth that drove him mad. A cold, dank, and moldy scent carried over into what little clothing he had. Aside from his own filthy skin, it was all he could smell most of the time. He scratched his arm and cringed when flakes of skin fell to the hard ground. He hadn't been cleaned for weeks. It was his punishment, of course. They knew it made him crazy. And they used it as leverage to gain his cooperation. It wasn't a hard choice for him. If he refused, the punishment could be worse. The lashings were nothing he hadn't eventually learned to take. Physical pain was only on the surface. He could handle that. It was the other stuff that took its toll. Every day was the same. There wasn't much he could do about it. They ruled him, and he wasn't strong enough to take them all. If he was, Evander would have left long ago. But one day, he'd have his revenge, and it would taste better than anything he'd ever sunk his teeth into. That's what kept him going. It would have been easy to get them off him. They were easily riled and often killed without hesitation. It was one reason they were so feared among the dragon kin. Not many would move against them, and the tension showed in the ranks. He paid attention, listened in, and took note of everything, just in case he could ever use it to his advantage. The guards stood against the castle wall glaring at him. Rinse and repeat. That's what it was like for him, day after day. It was the same guard he'd nearly killed just months before, but too soon the other guards heard his call and came to his rescue. It was a shame, really. Evander chuckled as he remembered that day. It was one of the best he'd had in a long time. It had taken the guard a full day to heal. Since the incident, Lyle had done everything in his power to make Evander's life hell. Not that it had far to go to get there. He was, after all, a prisoner to the council. And they made sure he was reminded every single day that the only reason he was alive was because they had decided to let him be. Assholes. He glared right back. The guard didn't like messing with him anymore, but he also had the upper hand. Evander was stuck behind a wrought iron locked gate, with only a worn cot and a thick blanket. The bitter chill from the cement floor soaked through the thin layers of his battered shorts. He was a dragon. Cold wasn't an issue for him. Warmth, on the other hand. He shuddered, ignoring the chill that ran down his spine. It tingled along the scars as a daily reminder why heat was bad for him. He didn't need to relive his horrors. What he needed was to get the hell out of the only place he'd ever known. He had no reason to stay, and every day he tried to figure a way out. So far, he'd come up empty. He'd heard the faint sound of Lyle's headset before he snarled and barked out his responses. He wasn't happy about something, and Evander wasn't either. Usually, this meant it was time to face the council and do something he hated. He was just tired. He didn't want to fight. "Are they ready to off me yet?" He wasn't joking, but he smiled anyway, hoping to unnerve the guard, if only. He'd been waiting for that day since he was 10, and they'd taken the only person in his life he ever cared for. "Don't we all wish?" Lyle muttered, and stuck the key in the lock. The lock was old, and a high-pitched squeal had him gritting his teeth. "What's the matter? Jealous the council likes me enough to keep me alive?" Being able to taunt the guards was the only real joy he got out of life. It beat the daily boredom and loneliness. Most of the time, it didn't bother him, but being a golden dragon made it harder to be locked away from his kin. He didn't understand why it mattered that he wasn't pure. No one could even tell he wasn't, or so he thought. There were no defining features that said, "Hey, he's not pure." It was what it was. His mother didn't choose to have an affair outside of her race. That choice was taken from her. His hand shook, just as it always did. A nervous tic that sprang up any time he thought of the woman whom he'd lost too soon. Lyle noticed and smirked, as if he knew just what Evander was thinking about. "They don't like you," he said and sneered. "You're useful when necessary, but you're nothing but a whipping boy." And that truth sucked.